Okay, well, we will get started here. Welcome, everyone, to this month's Portals Community Call, October 2023. It is great to have you with us. I'm Jason Gumper from msdynamicsworld.com. As always, we are joined by Nicholas Hayduk of Engineered Code. Great to have you back, Nick. And just a couple notes here. First, we do welcome your questions as the presentation, as the hour goes. So look for the questions block in the webcast interface and enter them at any time. We're also recording today's event. We'll be making that available to all of you after the session ends. So without any further delay, I think we are ready to begin. Nick, I'm going to hand things over to you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Let's get going. So yeah, welcome everyone. Today we're talking about a very exciting new topic, something that's been asked about for years and years and years, and that is Bootstrap version 5. But before we talk about that, let's go through our regular kind of agenda here. So quick introduction, if this is your first time joining us, welcome. My name is Nicholas Hayduk. I'm the president and software engineer at Engineered Code Consulting Inc., based here in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I've been working with Power Pages for many, many years now. My career began at ADX Studio, which was the company that originally built Power Pages and was acquired by Microsoft in 2015. If you're not already connected with me on LinkedIn, please feel free to do that. Otherwise, if you're interested in additional Power Pages content, you can check out our Twitter feed where we post all the different things we do, and that includes the blog that we have, that includes our YouTube tips. I just went through and we're working on tip 240 right now. I've got 3 or 4 more scheduled or planned after that. So over almost 250 tips now, all related to Power Pages. We've also got our excuse me, the podcast that I do with Mr. George Dubinsky. That's on available at crm.audio, and that's called Refresh the Cache. So if you're looking for Power Pages content, we've got you covered on most of the mediums that are out there. All right. Just want to express my gratitude, as always, to Jason and the team at MS Dynamics World for their support of these community calls. Jason and I got to meet up in person last week, which was great to talk about this community call. We were both at the Summit North America, the Dynamic Communities Summit, and did run into some people who said they were avid listeners or joined the call. So great to have those folks, and that's in thanks to Jason and his team for helping us get the word out and supporting us and presenting these calls with us. So thank you to Jason and his team. So our agenda is as follows. As usual, we'll talk about some portal news quite a bit. It's been our call in September was kind of earlier in the month, so it's been more like 6 weeks since we've last got together. So lots of news to cover. We'll then talk about Bootstrap version 5, and we'll talk about the date and time of the next portal community call. And Q&A, if you do have any questions throughout this whole time, please just drop it, as Jason mentioned, in the questions block there in GoToWebinar. Okay, let's talk about portals news. So again, the best place to see what the official news from Microsoft is the Power Pages blog. So that's powerpages.microsoft.com. And then you go to the blog area. So there's been lots chatted about on the blog since we last met. In no particular order, I think roughly reverse chronologically, we've got the recent announcement about an AI chatbot for private content. So the AI chatbot was announced, I don't know, a few months ago, many months ago. But one thing, it was kind of restricted just to publicly available content that could be crawled kind of on the site. Now, this most recent feature announcement is the ability for it to look at content that's private and kind of consider security roles within that chatbot. So you can be asking the chatbot questions, and it may answer differently depending on which access to the different parts of your Power Pages site that you get. Lots of Copilot, as always, from Microsoft these days. So Copilot in the Design Studio, Copilot to help you build multi-step forms, Copilot for VS Code for web. So if you're editing sites in VS Code for web, which is kind of my go-to interface these days, you'll see Copilot in there as well as using Copilot as the chatbot for end users. So all of those are have been announced, whether they're kind of in preview, generally available depending on the topic. But lots of Copilot investment being put into Power Pages and, of course, the entire Microsoft stack in general. Bootstrap 5, I'll skip over that because we're going to be talking about that a lot, but that was announced here in the last few weeks. The other big news, Power Pages, ALM, via solutions, the enhanced data model, all of that stuff now has been made generally available. I'm a little bit more familiar with the whole kind of Power Platform pipelines and the how they work with Power Pages, the whole ALM thing there, mostly because I went to Michael Auch's excellent presentation at Community Summit. So we've done lots of stuff with pipelines and Azure DevOps, but we, because of Power Pages and how you do them, haven't gotten too much into the Power Platform pipelines with available for managed environments. But now, because the enhanced data model and the essentially the ability to include solutions or include your Power Pages data into solutions, all of that is GA now. So if you ask me, that's the direction I'm moving with our projects. Is we're using enhanced data model in Bootstrap 5. Spoiler alert: we're incorporating that into new projects. I feel like if you're not including those right now, you're just setting yourself up for some sort of migration project here in the not too distant future, whether that's in the next year or two. I suspect the standard data model and Bootstrap 3 are on their last legs. So start with those things now. Bootstrap 5, of course, is still public preview, but with the enhanced data model being generally available, that's the direction I would go. I'm not aware of there being what the migration path is for existing sites using the standard data model. I suspect there will be some sort of tool to do that. I don't suspect that will be too painful of a process because it mostly is a behind the scenes data type thing. So it's really just a tool. You run the tool and it migrates your stuff. Hopefully it'll be pretty seamless for most people, but I don't know what the timelines are on that. And that's just an assumption on my part that Microsoft will be building some tooling there to migrate you. If I had to guess, it's probably part of the pack CLI where there'll be a command to migrate from the standard data model to the enhanced data model. A couple other things that have been announced: virtual table support in the Design Studio, so the ability to create virtual tables for, I believe it's SharePoint and Azure SQL. You can create those directly within I think it's in the Data tab, directly within the Power Pages Design Studio. So that's one of those features where you could do that before. You just had to create it, whether it was in Power Apps or just other places to accomplish the same thing. That's just another thing where they're trying to get that complete story within the Power Pages Design Studio. And lastly, if you still are one of those lucky people who has the D365 add-on license for Power Apps portals or Dynamics 365 portals, the $500 a month license, it's now they're kind of improving that experience and using that with Power Pages, because again, whether you have licenses for Power Pages or Power Apps portals or D365 portals, those are all the same thing. So it doesn't really matter how you got your licenses, you're still using all the same technology. So they've just kind of made it simpler for people with some of those older licenses to use some of the newer stuff and to create new things based on that new stuff. So yeah, that's kind of what we've got for news this month. Like I said, quite a bit, but yeah, keep an eye out on that blog because that's where all the fun announcements are coming from. So let's get into today's topic. As I mentioned, Bootstrap version, an upgrade for version 3 of Bootstrap in Power Pages has been a question for many years. If you're not familiar with Bootstrap, it's a responsive front-end framework, so it's mostly kind of CSS or some JavaScript components as well. Originally, it was built by Twitter. It was kind of originally conceived as a way to standardize any of the internal tools that they had. So rather than every different little internal web app that Twitter was building having a different UI framework, they said, hey, we're going to use this Bootstrap thing. So they built that and then eventually kind of released that to the community. So version 3 of Bootstrap was released in 2013. And it has been the foundation for Power Pages since the ADX Studio Portals days. So I believe it was version 7 was the first version that used Bootstrap, which was released in the 2014 timeframe. So essentially every version of this product that has come from Microsoft, Dynamics 365 portals, Power Apps portals, Power Pages, have used Bootstrap version 3. And as you can do, if you're good at math, you know that we're in the year 2023. It was released in 2013, so it's using a framework that is 10 years old, and that's a long time in the web UI space. So just to give you a little bit more history on Bootstrap, version 4 was released in 2018 approximately. Version 5 was released in 2021. And so what Microsoft has finally announced, it was part of the release notes, so we knew it was coming, but the ability to use version 5 of Bootstrap is now available in public preview. So anyone who wants to can go and essentially flip the little switch that says use Bootstrap 5 for new sites and can play around with it. Now, one thing to note that it is for the enhanced data model only. So this is for new sites or you can only enable it for the enhanced data model. So it's for relatively new sites. The tooling that I've played with in terms of we'll see the CLI that has some migration scripts, and it does work with the old one. So you can see the migration, but the documentation does reference that it is for the enhanced data model only. So for those of you wanting to kind of get going with this, it seems like we have to get an answer to, and if you want to get going with it on an existing site, it seems like we have to first get the answer to how are we going to migrate from the standard data model to the enhanced data model. So all things to be aware of. Hey everyone, for the first time ever, I'm going to interrupt myself for a quick correction here, because merely hours after we completed the community call, I got some clarification on this point. So I was incorrect to say that you require to use the enhanced data model for Bootstrap version 5. You can convert existing Bootstrap version 3 sites on the standard data model to Bootstrap 5. If you look at the documentation here for migrating existing sites, you'll see it has no reference to whether it needs to be standard or enhanced data model. The reason for my confusion was there was documentation about saying you required the enhanced data model, but really what that was indicating is in order to enable Bootstrap 5, you need to turn on the enhanced data model for that environment, but all that means is that new sites will get the enhanced data model, but existing sites aren't automatically converted or anything like that. So in this particular case, if you have existing sites that are using Bootstrap 3, in those environments you need to enable the enhanced data model, but the sites that are still on the standard data model can be upgraded if you'd like to. So now, while Power Pages went from version 3 to version 5, for those of you who are going to be tasked with upgrading sites from version 3 to version 5, know that the vast majority of the pain points are going to be the upgrade from version 3 to version 4. So the upgrade of Bootstrap from version 3 to version 4 was the one where most of the breaking changes occurred. Version 3 to version 4 was a pretty significant change. Version 4 to 5 is much more a much more minor change. So when you're reviewing the migration documents that Bootstrap has, and I would recommend that you look at those, and we'll take a look at those in a second. But when you're looking at the documents, you'll see that the upgrade from 3 to 4 requires quite a bit more changes than the upgrade from 4 to 5. So even though we're going from 3 to 5, you kind of need to be aware of what 4 was, because that's where a lot of those changes were. So what is it about version 5 that we like, and what are we going to have access to? So this is just some of the highlights from those documents. So in terms of the migrations between 3 to 4 to 5. So it moved to Flexbox. So if you're a CSS guru, you'll understand what that means. I kind of understand what that means. I got other people on the team that know much more what that means, but that was kind of a fundamental change to the way that a lot of web design was being done, was the move to the Flexbox display method. For people who are a little bit more basic with Bootstrap, I think the biggest change is the grid class names. So with Bootstrap 3, we used to essentially have kind of 4 sizes. There was extra small, there was small and medium and large. Now there are actually 6 of them. There's extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, and extra, extra large. Now, extra, extra large was added in version 5. And so that probably isn't going to cause you too much trouble, because that really just didn't exist. But one of the big changes that we see from version 3 to 4 was that, say, the medium, so the MD classes, aren't equivalent, because they introduced the new small in version 4. So version 3 had extra small, small, medium, and large. In version 4, small was changed to be a new breakpoint. So if you look at medium in version 3, it's basically the equivalent of large in version 4. So small is now medium, medium is now large, large is now extra large. So when we go through the process of converting and upgrading some of our markup, that's going to be one of the big changes that you see. Because what they did is they introduced a new breakpoint between what used to be small and extra small. They then called that small, and then so that made everything else bump up. So you'll see that anywhere where if you used medium, large, or extra large, I guess if you used medium or large, those would have been those are something that's handled automatically by that upgrade script. In terms of the markup itself, panels, thumbnails, and wells, which are all kind of popular components in Bootstrap version 3, those are all gone. They've been replaced by a new component type called a card. So that's another one of those kind of significant changes, where if you're using panels, those all have to be replaced with new markup for cards. And just in general, there's quite a few markup class changes that have occurred. So especially on forums, like just the layout, it's not like night and day, but it's just enough that like pretty much any markup that you've created, for the most part, you're going to have to kind of double check and I guess hope that the conversions tools that Microsoft has provided will handle for you. But yeah, when you're going from 3 to 5, you're going to have to kind of consider that most of the markup is probably going to change slightly, whether it's some class names or even just, whether something needs to be wrapped in a div or not. I know there used to be a requirement, say with tables, that if you want to have a table class, you had to have a wrapper, and then they made it so you could put the table classes right on the table. So just little things like that where the markups changed slightly. If you didn't have to worry about the upgrade, like it still all feels very similar. It's just kind of different enough that it's not just like a pure just turn on the version 5 and away you go. There's just enough little tweaks in there that most of your markup will have to be reviewed for Bootstrap 5. Some other things. So the utilities. So these are kind of just beyond just like the grid classes that we use. If you're using like the hidden classes, those are gone. Those are replaced with display classes. So you can now say display this and display medium visible, display medium hidden, like different things like that. So hidden classes are gone. One of my favorite features, as well as one of our developers here who works a lot with Bootstrap 5, we love the new spacing utilities. So whereas before, say for the most part you were happy with all the sizing, but you were saying, hey, this section just needs to be a little bit, there needs to be a little bit more breathing room between these two sections. what that used to require you to do is, I don't know, do something silly like put an extra p tag or some extra break tags in there. Or it was a custom class where you were adding, inline styles an extra 20 pixels or something kind of silly like that. With Bootstrap version 5, I think they were in 4 as well. There are specific classes that say, hey, just give this more. So you can say, like, give me some extra space here. So you can add margin, you can add padding, and those are all just controlled via classes. So it means a lot fewer custom classes and a lot fewer inline styles. And there's also utilities for text sizing, colors, similar to what we had before, text alert, text danger, that sort of thing. But just lots more utilities. So it should mean a lot less custom styles and more just using the classes that they give you out of the box. There is no more dependency on jQuery, but don't let that fool you. jQuery will still be on Power Pages because Power Pages depends on jQuery. But there is no dependency in Bootstrap version 5 on jQuery anymore. And also just be aware of browser support. If you're one of those organizations that is worried about really old legacy browsers and supporting them, I believe, say, Internet Explorer is no longer like Bootstrap doesn't consider Internet Explorer. So you may want to check the list of supported browsers to make sure that the ones that you need to support are there. So let's just flip over to the Bootstrap documentation here. So as I mentioned, these are the links that I provided in that slide. It essentially is, so here's the guide of migrating to version 4, and then the guide for migrating to version 5. So you'll see that this is a relatively short list, but the Bootstrap version 4 I find is quite a bit more extensive. Again, I've provided some highlights in here, but I think if you're if you're going to be doing a few of these projects, it's probably good just to go through this. Again, none of it's groundbreaking, but again, they've just kind of reorganized how say input groups work or that sort of thing. They've talked about here in the so we've talked about here browser support, Flexbox enabled for default, the grid system. This is where they talk about the different grid sizes. So lots of stuff in here to go through. They talk about panels. So they say that panels are dropped for the new card component, but they also kind of tell you, hey, what are the rough equivalents in here? So these two documents here are going to be key to understanding how you're going to convert any of the custom work that you may have done. All right, quick question. No questions, so I will head back to here. Oop. Somehow we went through there a little quicker. All right. So what is the migration process? What is the work that you're going to have to do for a Power Pages site that currently is in using Bootstrap version 3? So as we've discussed, enhanced data model, you'll have to be on the enhanced data model according to the documentation. So there's going to be that process. I'm going to assume that, let's say that's already happened. I'm sure once they release the information on upgrading to the enhanced data model, we'll probably have a call on that as well. But for now, let's assume you're on the enhanced data model already, but version 3. Right now, what you do is you go into the Power Platform Admin Center and you enable the Bootstrap version 5. So that is here. And there's just this button here. So if you go into your environments, you open up your environment, and then you go to Power Pages Sites. You'll see here there's this Enable Bootstrap 5 for new sites. So I do have one site here created, this NH Bootstrap 5, BS5 site here. So that was created after I enabled that. And just to give you an idea of what that looks like, this is the site here with Bootstrap 5. So yeah, that's kind of the first thing is you enable it. Again, I'm sure at some point here soon there's going to be like that'll just be by default, but that's what we have to deal with for now. Another thing to note is that currently there is, if you're creating a new site with Bootstrap 5, you can select a certain number of templates. So you can upgrade any template, but you can only create a new Bootstrap 5 version site based on certain templates, and it's mostly kind of the starter and the basic sites. The reason behind that is that Microsoft has done all of the work to upgrade all of the code behind that we don't have access to. So all of the what used to be the master portal project, so all the views for doing modules like the ideas or discussion forums or those types of things, Microsoft has completed that work. The work that is still yet to be done is converting all of the data that resides in Dataverse to that. So all the web templates, web pages, all those sorts of things, not all of those have been done for all the different templates. So that's why if you start from scratch right now, if you installed it, they wouldn't have the version 5 of those. But because when you go from version 3 to version 5, Microsoft gives you the tool to upgrade. You can take an existing site, run it through the tools, and upgrade it that way. So that would be the process. If you want to use, if you were starting a new site and wanted to do that, you can install the version 3 and then kind of essentially go through the upgrade process. But if you install one of those ones that hasn't been updated yet, you'll still get version 3 of Bootstrap. So once you've enabled Bootstrap 5 in the Power Platform Admin Center, what you'll then do is you will use the pack, so the Power Platform CLI tool, to download all of your Power Pages data. So you'll use the pack Power Pages download command to download all the data. You'll then can use the bootstrap-migrate command, which will go through all the files that exist that you've downloaded, and it will do its very best to convert those from Bootstrap version 3 to Bootstrap version 5. And we'll see an example of that here in a second. You can then review the diff files because it gives you all the files about what it changed. And then once you're satisfied with that, you'll upload those back into Dataverse, and you will test and you will fix things. I think for basic sites, if you haven't made any significant changes to web templates, it's possible that might be everything you need to do. But I feel like if you've done any sort of custom CSS and JavaScript, there's a decent chance that you'll have to make at least some minor changes to your code. So prepare yourself for a few iterations of this, where you download, you run the tool, it fixes most of the things, you then upload, and then you test each page, and then you make small tweaks to that code to make it work for Bootstrap version 5. So that's essentially going to be the process for each site. Of course, the more you do it, the more you're going to know what to look for and what the tool doesn't cover. So let's again, we'll look at this in practice. We'll look at what the tool actually produces. But just at a high level, the bootstrap-migrate command in the Power Platform in the Power Platform CLI, what it does is it creates a separate folder for the migrated data. It goes through all of your HTML and CSS and JavaScript, and does its best to adjust the markup and or CSS classes to conform to the new Bootstrap version 5 version. Like I mentioned, it provides a diff JSON file, so it basically gives you a list of all the changes that it made. And we'll see that in in VS Code, there's a tool that can get you. It will actually highlight all the changes that were made. The main thing to know is that this tool is not perfect. There's no easy button here. You're not just going to click a button. Your whole site's going to work perfectly. I would recommend that you're visiting every single page on your Power Pages site. Use this as an opportunity to see how everything's working on your site, and yeah, check everything. But I think for a lot of people, this is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, because it does handle quite a few of the scenarios. And yeah, if you're looking at the Bootstrap, the migration document that we looked at earlier to go from 3 to 4 to 5, I think a lot of the rules that Microsoft has put in, or a lot of the rules that are indicated in there, Microsoft's put into their tools. But again, it's not perfect. So assume that you're going to have to take a peek at every file or every page to make sure that it works as you expect. Okay, so why don't we look at how that actually kind of works in practice here. So I've got my site here, and I've got VS Code. So so what I did earlier was I ran this command. So if you didn't already know, if you've got the latest version of the Power Platform CLI, still known as PAC, it started off as the Power Apps CLI, so that's where PAC came from, but it's now called the Power Platform CLI. The command for Power Pages used to be PA Portals from the Power Apps Portals days, but as of the last kind of more recent versions, you can now replace that with Power Pages. The old way still works, PA Portal still works, but going forward, you'll see me using PAC Power Pages. So after having successfully connected to my Dataverse environment, I ran the command to download my Power Pages site to this directory. So this NHS23 directory, this is what I get. And if you've done any work with Power Pages in VS Code, this should be pretty familiar to you. Let's, for example, look at the web templates. So within the web template, we can say, look at the header. And what's going to be most interesting to us is this header.webtemplate.source.html. This file here has all of the markup for our header template. Lots of stuff in here that is Bootstrap version 3 specific. And so you'll see we've got some visible classes in there. There's going to be some divs with there's going to be some navigation changes in there. We've got some column stuff. So we'll MD12, again, that's probably going to get changed to a large 12. So lots in here that we would expect to get to change. So once you've downloaded that, the next step is to simply run bootstrap-migrate. So I'm pointing it at this directory that I've just installed here. Now what I'm going to try is I'll go like this. I'm just going to run this migration again. So I'm going to go nhs23--nhs23. We'll see if we can get that to run. Oh, I have not formatted that correctly. There we go. All right, so now it's migrating all of these files. You can see it's doing JavaScript, it's doing CSS, it's doing HTML. So now it's finished that. So I'm just going to delete this folder here because that was one I ran earlier. And now what you can see is that it's created a version 5 folder for me. So this was my previous folder. Now what we've got is version 5. Okay, got a quick question here from Lucas. Did they enable the CLI download of the enhanced data pages within the same release? I and others on the forum still cannot download pages with enhanced data model. Good question. Let me try this. PAC Power Pages list. Let me try and download the Bootstrap 5 version that I installed, because that would be the enhanced data model. So that would be a negatory. So I think at this point, I honestly, I'm not sure if this is the latest version of the PAC CLI, but it looks like that's still not working. So yeah, I guess keep an eye out. Once we see that working, we'll tweet that out. Okay, one more correction, 2 in this video. This is what happens when you do a Portals community call on something that is in public preview. So there was this confusion about how do we use the PAC CLI with the enhanced data model. We couldn't get to work on the call, and that's because there is just a simple parameter that you can use to download and upload your Power Pages sites. So if you're using either the download or upload command, simply include the -- model version --2 command, and it should work to be able to download and upload your Power Pages site. Question from Jim here. Is this a legitimate strategy for upgrade? Clone prod environment, upgrade in the cloned environment, test fixed in cloned environment, download from clone, upload to prod, celebrate. It is. I'm hoping that perhaps you already have a dev environment, and then you'd be upgrading your dev environment and then moving those changes along. But yeah, this might be an opportunity to refresh dev or do something like that. Anytime that you clone prod to do development work can always be a bit scary because you're working with production data, so you're not generally the production Power Pages data isn't the scary part. It's the production customer data, so contacts and accounts, and what happens if you copy a workflow that accidentally sends off a million emails. That I'm talking from experience here, trying to copy those things. So I'm always very careful about doing that. Often cloning production, if you're using managed solutions, is not an option either. But so it just kind of depends on your situation. But I'm usually fairly, I like to avoid cloning production if I don't have to, just because then you're working with production customer data, which can be a bit scary. Okay. Okay, those are the two questions so far. So yeah, so let's take a look at this NHS 223 V5 thing. So it has, again, the same structure in here, but with the big difference is if I open up, say, my header, not only do I have this HTML, and let's just take a quick look at this one. We talked about that MD chain in charge large, but we also have this diff file. So I think I want to do, yeah. So I just formatted this JSON file, but you can see that this JSON file provides me details of all of the changes that it made. The other thing I can do is when I'm looking at this file is I can do, is it Control-Shift-P? Yeah, so there's this Bootstrap diff command, which will actually read in that diff file and highlight all the places it made a change. And you can actually hover over it and it will basically show the note. So this is just kind of a nicer interface for seeing what's going on here. It's basically just displaying the message here that's in there. But again, if we go into here, Control-Shift-P, Bootstrap diff, if we hover over this, you can see why, what's changing and why it's making those changes. So you can see here, because it used to be a medium, where they're replacing the medium with large, because in Bootstrap version 5, medium is now large. So essentially my recommended approach is you go through this, you run this tool, you go through all these changes to make sure that they are what you're expecting them to be. This is a great way to learn what changes may need to happen. Again, it's going to try and go through your JavaScript and try and identify things. It's going to go through your CSS. I don't know if I have any web files with CSS in them. So yeah, so bootstrap.min.css. So it's actually going to go through here. And if I were to Control-Shift-P on this one, look at this, it's going to highlight the various differences I have in here. Oop, that's not what I wanted to do. Alt-Shift-F, there we go. So you can see in here, we've got lots of different changes in there. If we go back here, what else we got? The basic theme has a bunch of changes in it. So this is a custom theme. Do that and do the Bootstrap diff. So it's highlighting what used to be, say, static top is now, or what used to be navbar static top is now top. So you can see all the different changes that's made in these files. So essentially, I'd be going through literally every file that's changed. If you have source control, it's going to make it very easy to identify which of these files has actually changed. because otherwise you'll run into these diffs, and some of these diffs will be completely empty, and so kind of have to poke around. But yeah, if you do the if this is all checked in source control, you can put this back into, do a pull request, and you'll see exactly which files have changed. Again, that's a great way to learn what are the differences between the versions, and then you can think, is there any place in my own custom CSS, own custom JavaScript that may not have found those? If you're using classes within your JavaScript, it depending on how you've named them and stuff, or how you've used them, it may or may not find those. And then again, it's going to be a case of visiting every page, testing it to make sure that it works, because there's unfortunately no foolproof answer to that. So that's kind of the process at a high level. Again, all the code that's behind the scenes, so all the code that's hosted within the Power Pages project, Microsoft has already handled that for you. There is a site setting called site/bootstrap v5 enabled. So if I look at my sites in here, this one is set to true. So that's essentially what tells the code behind the scenes which version of the view layouts. I was chatting with the product team, and essentially they've just came up with new views for Bootstrap version 5, and so they'll use the Bootstrap version 5 views if that thing is set to true. So that's how it knows which version to use. So the code behind is all handled by Microsoft for you. But anything that's data within your environment, if it's an existing site, you have to go through this migration process to do that. And I think the intention is, if you haven't really customized Power Pages very much or at all, that the tool will essentially do that. My expectation is that Microsoft is using these tools on the out-of-the-box templates, and if you run them, they're for the most part, they're going to work and handle all the changes. It's just going to be your custom stuff that may not be caught up in all that. So, let's see here. See, we talked about that. We talked about that, and we've talked about, again, they have this documentation about how to enable this. This is where they say that it's only supported for the enhanced data model. Again, it's all public preview right now. I don't know what the timelines are for going into being generally available. To be honest, the enhanced data model came out quicker than I thought it would, so it's possible that this will come out quicker than I thought. Here, if you're curious as to which templates are supported, these are so we've got the blank, we've got the different starter templates, and then we've got the three original kind of new templates, which was the application processing, programs registration, and the schedule a meeting at a financial institution. Those are the ones that are already enabled for Bootstrap version 5. But like I said, the rest of them, if you've already got one, you can go through this upgrade process. Although, as Lucas has pointed out, there seems to be a conflict where you have to use the enhanced data model for this, but you can't with the Power Platform CLI. So maybe I'm just on an old version, but that does seem to be a gap that we have to fill there. So let me see here. I'm not seeing any other questions. So let me just flip back to my presentation here. So that's essentially what I want to cover with the Bootstrap 5. It's relatively new, but again, I think for me, the big thing is the risk. I think the risk of using this Bootstrap version 5 is relatively low. So I would be incorporating into your projects kind of as quickly as your risk tolerances will allow. Of course, it's public preview, so in theory, you shouldn't be using it for production. But I think the risk on something on this is pretty low. This isn't a feature that Microsoft is going to walk back on, I don't think. Like, it's not like they're going to decide one day, hey, that didn't go very well, we'll take it away. So I think it's going to be there. And since you're kind of in control of all your data, maybe the tooling will get better, but if you kind of go through the process right now and everything works, I think the risk is relatively low. So if you got a new project that's starting on here, I think you're going to save yourself a lot of headaches in the future by embracing this kind of as quickly as possible. Jim is asking, do I know how long version 3 will continue to be supported? I don't. My gut tells me is that version 3, like I can't think of a strong reason why they would want to get rid of it very quickly. Because I don't think it really matters so much to them. Like they've already got the two sets of code. Um, and so I don't see there being a really strong desire for them to say version 3 is going away. Um, I could very much see that new templates will only use version 5. I could very much see that any new code that's written in the Power Pages code behind the scenes may only support version 5. So there may be new features um, that will only be available if you're using version 5. But I just can't think of a reason why Microsoft would be pushing people to move like that there's a business reason for them to really want to get rid of version 3. Version 5 is something that the customers have been asking for, um, but it's not like, and there are some, there's reasons that you want to be on the latest stuff, security patches, all that sort of stuff, but I don't know why Microsoft would want to be pushing you off of version 3. I don't know if there's a strong business case to try and push you off in any sort of expedited fashion, like, hey, they want you off in the next 6 months that they're going to deprecate version 3. So my guess, and this is based on nothing other than just my pure own hypothesis, is that we'll have, many months, if not, a year or 2 or 3 before they say, hey, this whole thing's turning off. Um, if you look at something like the classic front side editor, even though that was technically deprecated, supposed to be off, I think, at some point in October. I still see it on some of my sites. I don't see it on certain sites, but I still see it on some of the old ones. I just don't. I don't know what the reason would be to turn it off really quickly. So I suspect my guess is that we'll have a bit of time to make the migration. For certain projects, this will be a lot of work. And so that's why I think for enterprise implementations that have hundreds of pages, the upgrade will be a significant amount of work. So I suspect that Microsoft will give us plenty of time to support those customers. So that's why my thought is it's more like years, just because, yeah, if you've got hundreds of web templates and those projects exist, this is not going to be insignificant, and this will be, maybe not so much a ton of work, because I think the script is actually going to help you out quite a bit, but I think it'll just be a big impact, right? It'll be like, hey, you got to test everything. And so it'll be one of those projects that often the testing budget will need to be bigger than the development budget, because the script's going to handle a lot of it for you. But I would be surprised to hear Microsoft say, hey, this thing's going to go away in, say, 2024. That would surprise me. Okay, so on the screen here, we do have the date of our next call, which is November 30th. That's the week after American Thanksgiving, I hope. As per usual, we'll be skipping the call in December. We usually like to give people a break around the holidays. So we'll be doing the November call, and then we'll be back again in January. I currently have not selected yet a topic for the 30th. So if you've got any ideas for me, please feel free to share those. Otherwise, I'll open it again to see if anyone has any questions, whether it's about Bootstrap 5 or whether it's about anything Power Pages related that we've talked about today, or any other time. Again, thanks to Jason and MS Dynamics World for their support, and let me know if I'll hang out here for another minute or two in case people have any particular questions.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, we will end the recording there. We can certainly keep the session open, though, and give people another minute or two if they want to get their questions in.
Jason, how was your travel back from the conference? Did you have were your flights okay?
Yeah, uneventful. It's one of the few events I've been to recently where I get a direct flight home. So
oh, that's
it was,
nice.
Pretty good, yeah. How about you?
Yeah, mine was fine. My only thing was I didn't get a hotel the last night because my flight was at 6 in the morning. So I just found various places to hang out until heading to the airport about 2 in the morning. So hung out in one hotel. Security gave me the boot. It was a hotel where some friends were staying, so we hung out there till about 11, and then I just sat around, and eventually they're like, "Hey, you're not a guest here, so get out."
Mm-hmm.
And then, which is fair. I mean, that's fair. I was not a guest, so off I went, and eventually made my way to the airport at like 3 in the morning. So it was a long day because I didn't really got a little bit of sleep on the planes, but beyond that, so. All right, well, I don't see any more questions, Jason, so I think we can probably wrap it up here, and we'll see everyone at the end of November.
Bye, everyone.